you're doing the audiobook for Break Up with
Hmm.
Yourself?
Yep.
What's that process like? Are you actually are you the one that is doing the reading?
No. My voice is horrible. I try to do it. Like I think like one, it's a lot of commitment. I started doing that. A lot of people had given me feedback. It's your book, it's your feelings. And I tried it, and yeah, I was not very impressed with it. I kind of did a couple of chapters last year, and then kind of edited it and wanted to see. And I'm too much in my head. An audiobook is such a niche. So I'm basically in the process of getting hiring someone from Fiverr who does this for a living, expert on it, and really have that feelings and emotions coming with it, because the book, the way it's written, that has to be there. Otherwise, it's just gonna be very monotonous.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm kind of choosing the right person. So kind of gave it some time, but I think this is the the right time to kind of launch it right about year mark. So
Do you normally like when just reading like on your own personally, do you like physically reading or do you like audiobooks?
I am a person, I love to touch books. Um,
Same.
but will I listen to audiobooks? Sure. Does that help? Yes, in the marketing side and on the sell side. Of course, a lot of people have asked me for audiobooks, and that's kind of was the intention there, so that I cover all the bases. I have a soft copy, I have a hard cover, I have a Kindle, and then of course I have these audiobook now. And
Mhm.
so other than that, but no, I'm asking. I am a completely physical book person, like not even Kindle.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, unless and until I have nothing going on and suddenly I feel like reading, I'm somewhere, sure, but I need to touch the books for sure. I feel like I feel connected, and I take notes. My books are like, I read a lot of nonfiction. That's all I read. And all my books are like filled with notes and covers and post-its and all that. So,
Yeah. I'm the same way. I like the physical book in my hand. Is there a book right now that you're reading that you're really
I
into?
am. This is the probably the 10th time I'm reading this book. And I have this thing about like, a lot of these books I go back and read and I learn new things. It's called Four Agreements.
Oh yeah.
The tall thing. I love that book. So I try to stick with a couple of these books right around earlier in the around New Year time, kind of set my mind right. So normally I do Man's Search for Meaning. I mean, I don't even know how many times I've read that book. I mean, that's probably one of my top three books, all forever would be.
Mhm.
And then this Four Agreements. I mean, like I actually, as a matter of fact, believe it or not, I didn't even know this until earlier this year about this book. I completely, I think I saw it in passing. I never really knew about it until like earlier this year, and I read it and I read it, and probably this is my, as I said, like fourth or fifth time already reading it. I'm like, man, I've been going into this, like, this is an amazing book to read. So,
That's really funny you mentioned that both those books actually in particular. But really quick before I ask you something, I wanted to give you a proper introduction because I actually
sure.
started recording a few minutes ago. Um, and as people who listen to me, I like to do like these rolling introductions, and I just kind of improvise it a little bit. You don't really know when I start recording, so I just start
Mhm.
at a random
Yeah,
time.
go for it.
Um, Thank you, everybody out there, for listening today. My name is Chris. This is Chee-Tash, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Rish Mitra. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yep, Rish Mitra.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rish, for joining. It's so funny you mentioned the Four Agreements because that was actually one book that I did chapter summaries of on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Was both the Four Agreements and Man's Search for Meaning. Man's Search for Meaning was actually the first book that I did chapter summaries of on the YouTube channel. So both those books hold special places in my heart, and I learned a ton from
Hmm.
those books. Um, you know, did you with your book, and we're going to talk about your book today, Break Up with Yourself? Did you draw any inspiration from maybe not only like those books that we mentioned, but other books in writing yours?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like for any author, um, i- you were writing your own book, but the inspiration definitely comes from a book because it's kind of like a paying it forward. And that those are the things that help me, like, Man's Search for Meaning. I think first time I read that or actually listened to it when I was in eighth grade in India from my dad. My dad was a teacher. And that's when I first knew that book. But I never really paid attention, just like any other teens. Like, what is this? And my dad would like talk about that, like, Viktor Frankl, Viktor Frankl. And ironically enough, about like I would say 10 years ago, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar and I heard that and it immediately hit me. I'm like, hold on a minute, I know about this book. So I of course bought that book and started reading. And yeah, same thing with, as I said, Four Agreements. I saw it in passing. I never really paid attention. Earlier this year, I kind of got into it. But there's so many books, I mean, I can keep, there's so many references to every books that have inspired me. The One by Gary Keller is big one for me, productivity wise, and really kind of implemented a lot of that because I have ADHD and I have a big time, I had big time focusing on stuff. And once I kind of realized that book helped me a lot, um, The One Thing, I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, there are so many books that really overall just help me. I can just keep naming it, like Lewis Howes Man's Masculinity book. I'm kind of drawing a blank here. Then the recent one also, Jay Shetty. Uh, oh my God, like I'm really kind of drawing a blank today. The Monk, the last book that he wrote, basically.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I've heard of Jay. Yeah.
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 So, I mean, overall, like a lot of these books, yeah. And then, of course, there's like motivation, self-motivational video. Books like Tony Robbins' book,
Mhm.
and then David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, and Never Finished. And a lot of these books may sound, you know, kind of contradictory to what my book is, but really, I mean, once people read the book, they understand like the masculinity and how I use the book to break up the stigma against masculinity and the word, the negative connotation that's attached to it nowadays, toxic masculinity. Uh, it's not just about giving up all the masculine energy and just embracing like being weak. It's if anything, it's actually the other way around. You have to be very strong to even bring up those emotions as a man. So yeah, I mean, like the books definitely are a big part of my life. Had always had been. And of course, Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy, Obstacle is the Way. I'm a big fan of Stoicism. Then I do read every day. I do read my Stoic, the 365 day. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of those books you mentioned. I've read Ryan Holiday's books, a
Hmm.
couple of them. The one and then the Gary Keller book. I've read that one as
Hmm.
well. I've gotten tons of value from reading those books. So, no, that's really cool. Before I ask you a little more about your book that you wrote, "Break Up with Yourself," um, I was wondering your origin story. You said that you're originally from India.
Yes.
Yeah, whereabouts in India are you from?
So I grew up in Eastern City. So India has four metro cities, and I grew up in Calcutta. It's British capital, what we call it. When British ruled us for 200 years, Calcutta was the capital, and it's east side of India. So it's in East India, and yeah, it's basically a metropolitan city.
Mm.
Uh,
Is it
that's where I grew up.
nice? Is it really big, or was it really big when you were there?
Oh, it's a big city. We
Mm.
have roughly back in the day, I think 17 million population, now probably about 24, 25 million population just in the city. the city and suburbs. So,
Oh, geez. Wow.
and one of the ways I actually help people identify that place is Mother Teresa. Uh, and that's where Mother Teresa opened her Missionaries of Charity. And Mother Teresa is laid to rest at in Calcutta. In her, that's where Missionaries of Charity is.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how old were you when you came to the U.S.?
25 years old, roughly.
Oh, wow.
About 24 years old.
Mm. Was that difficult to transition and come over to the U.S.?
Well, no, I didn't have a choice because my story kind of went was written in a very different way that I was planning to be honest. I grew up in a Catholic missionary school, despite being Hindu, and I have a lot of influence of my father in my life. And when he passed, when I was 23, I was doing actually my engineering, and then I couldn't finish my engineering because, of course, in India back in the day, now the rules have changed. But if you miss your one semester, as I was in my junior year, and you have to go back to freshman. I mean, that was a rule back then. And of course, I didn't take that. And from there on, it just different things here and there. And then I found out like in America, they take transfer credits as a transfer student. And that's how it happened. I mean, I came here. And after my father passed away, my mom said, like, my father was a teacher. So his last wish was always to see me get a degree. And she sold her house, and then I basically landed in US actually January 11th, 2006. So my almost 18 years anniversary coming up,
Mhm.
and it was a struggle. I think the reason I say I didn't have time to think is because it was do or die situation for us, for as a family, because we are very mediocre middle class family. And I came here in two suitcase and $200. That's it. That's all I had. And since then, after that, it's just building up. I came to Pittsburgh State University in a small town, Pittsburgh, Kansas. It's a Division two university, but their engineering program is on like number one, the manufacturing engineering. That's what I was focusing on. And after that, like it's just one thing after the other. Next thing you know, I'm graduated with a bachelor's and got a free scholarship for my master's, and just kept going.
Wow. Yeah, very inspiring. And where did your engineering career take off to? Did you work like many years in that field?
Yeah, so after 2008, I graduated right around the recession time frame, and I started working. I got a job in Indiana, Warsaw, Indiana, in like a biomedical field. I was designing and manufacturing uh, like a spinal fusion, knees, tibia, femur, and then actually making those with different metals. And then from there, you know, went to Caterpillar on heavy machineries, and then to Ohio Honda for an automotive, and then from there, kind of transitioned this way to Michigan, of course, and then started working for AAM, American Axle and Manufacturing, in right here in Detroit.
Okay. And do you still do that today?
So it's a funny story because I quit my corporate career about like 1.5 years ago, and I just uh, in about like a month I will go back again because this opportunity came, uh, fell on my lap, and they reached out to me, my ex-boss, and it's more of a transition succession plan, a very high position.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm going back to corporate. I mean, but of course, I have my business now and all that, but my wife will manage that. So it's a bit uh, transition situation right now also. So
Hmm. Now you have an organization called Dads and Deadlifts. Is that
right.
correct?
hmm
When did that start, or when or how did that start?
So in 2019, I act so. So kind of going back, my previous marriage. So of course, I got a divorce in 2020, and so all of this, like the foundation, my podcast, the book, everything really started off with based on that, and that's the story. So I don't know how you want to start off with, so I'll kind of walk you through. Um,
Yeah.
my son, who just turned 6 last Friday, 6 years old. He was born in 2017, and right after that, within I would say about 4 or 5 months into his birth, I started heavily drinking, uh, knowing without even knowing why. And of course, there was some other stuff that was going on, and I didn't quite figure out what was going on. I only thought like, this is just a marital problem. But then one day I actually just blacked out. And what happened is after that, doctors couldn't find anything. Then started my therapy, counseling, and lots of modalities later found out like, oh, my trauma came back. What I mean by that is I was sexually abused as a kid, as a child, when I was, well, 7, 8 years old. And I never really talked to anyone about it. Again, the boys, the stigma around boys and men. I didn't know all this stuff back then. But I think what the simplest way my therapist at that time explained, like, body keeps the score. And actually, that's a book too. I read that book now.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was my body's way of alerting me, like, now you're a father, you have a son. So that changed the whole scenario for me. And that's where I realized a lot of things that we grew up as a man uh, are just, it's not working. Everyone I reached out to either said, man up, or it's okay, let's go grab a beer and all that. And that's where I was really feeling all sorts of confused. I was like, literally, I wish I could explain to people. And every time I go to on any podcast, any shows, or even interviews, it's very difficult to explain that feeling. Like, you not only confused, you start questioning your existence. Like, as a man, like, so what now? Like, I'm 37 years old, and what am I really good for? Um, and no one teaches you that either. I took all the fatherhood classes, all the parenting classes, and everything, and so all of that kind of came crashing, including some emotional abuse, uh, and that's very hard to fathom for men because we don't talk about it. Only people think that men are always the perpetrators, but that's not always true. There's a lot of different ways abuse can happen, and so keeping the sanctity and the respect, I normally don't talk too much about that. But that's where it all started. Like, I started questioning, and I really started writing things. I journaled, and I basically started my podcast around COVID timeframe. That I have to go to get to the bottom of it. And I started interviewing people. I started interviewing men. I started interviewing women who went through domestic violence, and started raising awareness that this man up culture is not really serving us. And especially being a father of a son, I really kind of took it on me that I gotta start breaking the cycle myself. Otherwise, this cycle will never break. And it started off as just individual journey, but soon it became to a point. It came to a point where I was doing podcast interviews, like 3 or 4 interviews a day, and the heavy stories that I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
And during COVID, we all were free, right? Like, so we were working from home, and then at night, I mean, like, I would be booked from 5 to 10 p.m. I would have like interviews after interviews and after interviews, and that's when I realized like how little resources are there for men. And I started volunteering on different organizations, and I saw the ineffective ways that these are happening. Although there will be a men's night educational seminar, there won't be any men. The charities are getting the money from the state or local governments or whatnot, but there are women with the kids. The men will only show up like 10 minutes before the seminar ends for free pizza and soda,
Hmm.
and they will write their name because they also get a certain percentage. I was like flabbergasted. I'm like, hold on a minute. So what's the point of all this then? What does charity do? What does this like? So of course I was not very welcomed that way. And so that's kind of started me like, you know what? I'm gonna create my own foundation. And I had no clue what I was doing, to be honest. So it was just very whimsical, and I created that Dads and Deadlifts and 501c3 status, and really just using that as a platform. And the podcast already took off by then, and I was getting a very good views and a lot of listeners around 27 countries. So I was on a roll, and that's how it all started. Really, the foundation and all that. And then the Clubhouse game, if you remember, in 2021.
Oh yeah.
And that's where I got really, really got the platform that I needed. And I would go on every room and I would talk about it. I'll host room on men's mental stigma, men's health, boys. And I came around a group. We all kind of had the same mission. And then we did our first virtual Wake Up World Summit in June of 2021, not only about domestic violence, but we actually focused on human trafficking because we realized like how all of these are so everything is just all tied together, and that's kind of like started off. And then of course this year on my birthday, May 15th, we did our second Wake Up World Summit, again focusing on and raising money. And so that's basically how it all started. And
Mhm.
we're just kind of getting started really because 2024 I have a lot of big plans, where I'm doing a lot of physical, pushing myself to raise awareness. Like I'm running 100 miles in September,
Oh wow.
and I'm gonna start really really like market and like really do a lot of PR on that to raise money for men's mental health. Not only just for my foundation, but like overall, there are different foundations that are doing amazing work. And So this 2024 will be all that, like really a lot of my physical activities that I'm kind of focusing on that, and raise awareness towards
Well, David Goggins would definitely be proud of you for running 100 miles.
Yes.
That's yeah. That's kudos to you. That's very challenging and difficult to
Yeah.
do. I have trouble just running like a couple miles. So yeah, no, that's awesome. Specifically with your book, Rish, how long did that take you to write? Was that like a long process? Was that difficult?
So I started in the book, the mind map. Uh, I would say about May or June of 2020, around COVID timeframe. And my target was to finish it in like about 8 or 9 months. And I did finish, but then I looked back and I deleted like 70% of it one night. I just sat there, read it, and I didn't like it because that book became, I felt like it was just telling my story, and it was just another book that just talks about someone's pain. And I realized that night, I still remember that night, like it was November. It was snowing outside, and my son was only like 2.5 years old, and he was sleeping. And I looked at him, and like, I don't want him to read this book. It's not gonna break his cycle. So I literally just, again, just deleted 70% of it, the whole book, and completely re-strategize like what I want to really accomplish. What's the mission for this book? Completely change the outcome of it. So if you read my book, first couple of chapters, I just literally touch based on a couple of things. The rest is just my journey to healing, my journey, how I uh, grabbed a lot of the tools and what worked for me. Uh, and really focusing on that in a very stoic way, and taking the emotions out of it. and the discipline side of it, and how we all can break the stigma if we want to.
Mhm.
And by the time I got done, I would say then it took me a long time. The reason is I wrote that, and then I again felt like I was not being true. The reason is I said that because a lot of my bad habits, if I may say so, like those previous behaviors came back during like those years, and I didn't want to just publish it. So I went back and again looked at all the tools that I've created in the book, changed some of that, and again applied that to me. And it took a few trial and error to come up with this. That's the process I call it's CALM, CALM, communicate, analyze, lean in, and mitigate. Um, and then finally, when I was really happy to again switch it back and like I was in a very good place, it was last year, early. I mean, like I would say around this time, I was very happy. I was like, okay, so I'm good to go. And next thing
Mhm.
you know, during holiday break last year, and I just literally went with like all guns blazing. Finished it. I had an amazing editor I found. I only wanted to work with her only. Uh, and from then on, there was just a countdown, and we just finished the book.
Mhm. Wow.
So really, it took
Yeah.
about, I would say, from start to finish. So it was definitely took about 2.5 years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, that's awesome to like stick with something for that amount of time. That's very difficult, and shows your perseverance, I'm sure, to like stick with something like that.
It's funny. I would always look at the draft, and I will go back, I'll look at the draft, I'll go back and look at the draft, and there's that imposter syndrome that comes in. That's like, man, who am I to talk about it? Like, there's so many people worse than me going through that. But then every time I kind of went back to the grounding rule that why I started all this and why I put myself just out there, being this vulnerable, and that's really not for me, for my son. And now I'm married again, and by marriage I have my elder son. Because I really don't believe in step and all that. I really don't. I feel like this is something that I want to teach my kids too.
Hmm.
So he's 13 years old. He's about to be 13. So I had to learn pretty quick how to be a father of a teen. And and I would look at them and I would be like, yeah, I mean, these are the two reasons I really started. So even if this book doesn't do anything, I'll be happy that I have leaving a legacy for my kids for them to read. And next thing you know, it just ended up become bestseller on Amazon. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the first chapter of your book, there were some statistics that you laid out in regards to men, and like some of them are, well, all of them are like very alarming. The fact that men account for such a high percentage of suicides in the U.S. A lot of men deal with some sort of trauma, suffering from depression, anxiety, and I'm wondering, do you think that society today in the U.S., do you think most people uh, recognize these struggles of men, or do you think that some of these statistics are still kind of not too many people know about what's going on with men?
So I think more and more people are coming up and coming out to talk about it, but the numbers are still skewed, to be very honest with you, because I have interviewed people. I have talked to the scientists, I've talked to the professor, I've talked to psychologists, and numbers are skewed. We all know that. If it says 76% of men are suicidal, you can easily admit like 91% of men are suicidal. I'm just throwing a number here. The reason is because no one's really, a lot of people are not even reporting. And I believe that we have yet to come to a point where people will still notice uh, that what's going on with our boys. And that's why I even wrote in the book that if you really see and if you really go back, all the school shootings that happen, no one's talking about that. All of them are boys and
Mm.
men. All the shootings, forget about school shootings. None of them are women.
Mm.
Not a single. When I did the research, I was hoping I'll find one.
Mm-hmm.
None. So that just tells you something, that this is an issue that we fail to address. It's very easy to point fingers to the shooter. And with due respect, I mean, with people who lost their lives, but I'm coming at a very different angle at this point. I'm not saying that what they have committed is not heinous. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be punished. But what I'm really after is what's next. How can we change this? Banning guns and weapons is not just the only solution. You ban guns, they will find something else. But really, the problem is mental health. The problem is stigma around boys and men, that you cannot express your emotions. And we are not even teaching our boys and men that. So banning something or changing something else outside or explicit, I mean, like extrinsic thing, will not help. It's at the end of the day, it's us learning how to communicate, learning how to really hone in on one particular issue and give that space and give the tools to our boys and men. And not only that, like give the safe space. That's probably the biggest uh, to do that. And the problem is now, when you are raised by men who also didn't have any clue, which
Mm-hmm.
is our past generation, with due respect, they also didn't know better. So the cycle continues unless and until you actually pause, reset, and be like, hold on a minute. Is this really the way to go right now?
Mm.
Are we still living in cave? Do we still need to have that attitude of like men are hunters
Mm.
and women are
Yeah.
gatherers? No, we don't.
Mm.
Right? And that's where it comes down to, like, so teaching the boys to express, teaching the boys to really embrace the yin and yang of masculine and feminine energy, and really be strong. Like learn how to be powerful, learn all of it as masculinity as is, but also learn how to tame it. And that's what makes a man, not the other way around, to just show around like and just fight and just for no reason without a purpose.
Mm.
So that's what I feel like. Boys and men have no purpose. I mean, we feel like there's a lack of purpose. And honestly, men are supposed to do something with their life, to take care of the family. That's just how it is. It is supposed to be. And when they lack that purpose, that's when all of this kind of fall out of sync.
Mm.
And next thing you know, like you're not expressing, you're not emotionally available, and everything kind of turns into one thing after the other. It's a domino effect. So something's gonna happen. Something's gonna give at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But excuse me. But these numbers are, I mean, no one. I still think that everyone knows, hears it, but it doesn't get as much attention as Me Too movement. And again, I wrote that in my book, and rightfully so. Uh, I'm a big supporter of Me Too movement, but I think one of the issue that really people are missing, that men and women still live together in a society. So you cannot just educate one portion of the society without educating others. Nothing will change. You have to educate the men too,
Mm.
to learn how to embrace it, learn how to embrace their divine feminine energy, now learn how to embrace, um, how to express, how to be, have that connection. Because right now, only just talking about feminism and like women power, it's all needed, it's all good, but again, you are creating and you are segregating. That's the whole point. We have created these different buckets,
Mm.
so it just continues that. So Me Too movement is again creating, keep separating that. So do it, but do it with inclusivity, like include everyone. And trust me, there are men who's ready to be included. It's just the problem is you're taking everything in one bucket and throw it in there.
Mm.
So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I know you've mentioned a couple times now on these stigmas of being a man. Like, I know in your book you mentioned like we have to be like super strong, like physically strong,
Hmm.
or we can't show emotions, and we kind of
Hmm.
have to be just very like a statue almost. Are those kind of like the biggest stigmas, or like what other kind of stigmas are there about being a man that are kind of, um, I guess maybe holding men back, if you will?
Well, that's how it starts, right? Like because when we were kid, our parents or our society around us or environment around us, to kind of generalize everything, is already saying boys don't cry, don't throw like a girl.
Hmm.
So all these statements are already so damaging to the social fabric. Imagine a boy growing up and just listening to that. And then you go to school, then you do like say for example, and myself included, I was part of school soccer team. And I forgot the statistics, and I think I wrote that in the book, that there are high school athletes who will not even complain that they're injured, and they will keep playing until actually a bad injury happens. The reason is, what will my coach or my teammates will think
Hmm.
because I'm weak. I mean, imagine the amount of thought process it takes and conditioning it takes, or grooming it takes, growing up for a boy to even feel like that they cannot even express their own injury.
Yeah.
So that's where it all starts. But not just the weak, not just the strength. That's one, the expression. Secondly, the idea of like we have to be macho all the time. We have to be that. And I agree to a certain point. Absolutely, be that protector, be that person, the rock.
Hmm.
That's one of the role of a man. But the other role, I think we are forgetting, that being rock also needs to have that support on a softer side, not just all the time like in a fighting mode.
Hmm.
So that's missing. The stigma around how you want to portray yourself, and that bleeds into your workspace. Men will never complain about burnout because of a fear of being judged at workplace and
Hmm.
stress. Next thing you know, that turns into suicide, that turns into addiction, that turns into domestic violence, and just it just a trickle effect, each one of them. So this idea of you will need to be the provider. So everything is okay in moderation. And we have taken that to a complete extreme at this point.
Hmm.
That we are teaching also the boys that this is how it is. We only have, it's a hustle culture, right? Like that's just hustle, hustle, hustle. And I believe in hard work, but not at the cost of our mental health.
Hmm.
And I am a living proof of that. I went through that. And now I know, like, it doesn't serve. And these stigmas are all part of it. And not to mention, of course, our LGBTQ community that I always talk about. Um, it takes courage to come out and say, I love that is not normalized by society. And all these stigmas, and of course, the other side of it is our color, skin color, religion. Men have this invisible responsibility on their shoulder they carry without even knowing, we feel like.
Hmm.
There's no one can pinpoint it. But if you really sit down and think, a lot of that comes from that. Like just how we are groomed throughout. So the stigmas are just all over. You just decide which stigma are you at. Like, I mean, for me, um, I couldn't even tell people that, man, I had been drinking a lot lately until it got really worse. And I'm like, wow, I mean, this is probably what addiction feels like. I mean, I had been asking myself that. I had no one to go to tell them that, is this what addiction feels like?
Hmm.
And compared to women, they are very good in tribe. They're very good in circle. They're not judged. And men are immediately easy to judge.
Hmm.
Like, oh, come on. That's not addiction, right? And these are the things that's so much stigma around it, like including your own friends, that it's at best you're confused, you know. So
Hmm. Is this where this concept that you talk about in the book of like wearing a mask comes in, where you end up like just feeding into the stigmas because you don't want to go against the grain, or you don't want to do anything different because, everybody else is kind of thinking the same thing. Everybody else is upholding the stigma. So you would rather just kind of go with the flow versus, you know, do something different or like think for yourself. And so you just end up wearing a mask to like fit in. Is that kind of where that concept comes in?
no, absolutely. And the best book I really read, and I always suggest people to read Lewis Howes' Mask of Masculinity. And that's exactly what it is. Like, we wear these masks like with pride, actually. And we say like, look, I mean, I don't get hurt. Look, I it's not that we don't get hurt. I rephrase that statement now. I'm hurting, but I'm not showing. It's not that we don't get hurt. We are human beings. Of course, it's hurting,
Mm-hmm.
but we choose not to show it. So what does it tell you? Like, we're wearing a mask, or we're trying to patch it. We're trying to hide it. So whatever name you want to give it to. Oh, I'm not crying, or I don't feel, I'm not afraid. And I wrote that in my book. Like, the very nature of not being afraid starts with being afraid.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fear of judgment. And that's exactly what it is. The moment someone tells you that I'm not afraid, and especially man, I'm not afraid of anything. It's again, it starts with the fear of judgment, no matter how much they try to defend that.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's so ingrained in our system that we do not even realize it. We just do it in an autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and next thing you know, we are 40s and 50s, and we are halfway through our life, and we're like scratching our head like, what went wrong?
Mm-hmm.
um, and then by that time it's too late, because we already passed that to the next generation, and the next and the next, and it just keeps going. But that mask comes from bearing those invisible responsibilities that we received, or we were groomed and conditioned from our environment around us. So it's a society. And I talk about this a lot, that we as boys and men grew up knowing very specifically what's our roles are, and it's very segregated to a point where you are not, you feel empowered, and that empowerment ends up becoming entitlement, and that's where the wrong is. We empower girls, and we say we empower boys, but the way we empowering boys, it is actually more becoming entitlement for
Mm-hmm.
them, for us, that yeah, we are the one, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if we take a step back and start empowering boys the way we empower our girls, I think that's the balance needs to happen. And that's where the fight is. I think a lot of people think like, oh my God, are you telling me to raise my kid, raise my boy as a girl? No, raise the boy as a boy, but more than that, raise them as human beings first. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where we are missing. We are immediately putting everyone in a gender bucket, and then creating so much segregation. And then we are telling them like, okay, now go and be this. So now you don't even have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So how important does like your network or like your circle of friends play a part in this? Because I'm kind of reminded of two quotes I've heard throughout my life. One of them was "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future," and there's another one like you are the sum of like the top. Uh,
5 people around you.
yes, yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Or the other one is like, your network is your net worth. So
mhm,
I am like, since I started working on this and since I became a vocal voice on this topic, I lost a lot of friends, and
oh,
I'm okay with it now, because it doesn't serve a purpose. I have received flack from my family members. I have cut ties with my own families, a lot of them. Why did I write the book? Why now? A lot of these questions came up,
mhm,
uh, and including some of my friends that I thought they were my friends, because I had to. The reason is, when you're on a mission, there's a lot of that, and I wrote that in the book too. Like, when you're gonna start walking in that journey of breaking the stigma, you cannot take everyone with you. It's not there. It's not your place. It's not your job. It's your job to start breaking the stigma. So whoever comes with you, welcome them. Whoever doesn't, let them be. Because first you have to take care of yourself. First, you yourself has to break the stigma before even you start preaching, start teaching.
mhm.
And honestly, you will find the circle. Once you're on that path, you will see people that are on that path. And some on that path, I feel like you will find dejected, give up, and then it's your job to pick them up and show them that, yep, I got you. Even though you were here before me, you're at a stopgap. I'm here. Let's go together. I'm talking very metaphorically, but that's how I feel. That's how it should be. That's how it is. And it's okay to lose people uh, when you are on a mission. And this is a mission at this point. This is a purpose for any father, for any man.
Uh, Earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned this acronym of CALM, which I know you wrote about in the book, and I was wondering if you could, again, kind of explain what CALM meant and how you use it.
Mhm. I mean, the key, I love to play with words, and I think that's where that it first came. I'm a writer. I'm very creative in that way. Uh, I always like to play with words, and a lot of things that we kept hearing as a kid, or as boys and men, all the time, would be calm down.
Yeah.
Calm down. Like, when we were expressing, or when we were like, as a boy, calm down. And one day I was just writing the book. I was like, why? Why? Then that's one of the reasons we never really expressed. It's just extreme. When we were trying to express, we had been met with calm down, and then when you're not expressing, then we were being congratulated for not expressing.
Hmm.
So that's where I kind of took that and then kind of turned it on its head. And I'm like, okay, the tools that I'm gonna start utilizing this calm. And the calm is acronym for communicate. And the very first pillar to break that stigma, you have to start communicating, not only with others. The communication needs to first happen with yourself. We speak millions of words every day, and I wrote that in my book. And what you are telling yourself becomes you. The words becomes your character, the thoughts. And you need to start communicating very differently about yourself. Then you have to analyze those communication. What is that really mean? At a surface level, communication does not gonna help. You really have to go deeper and take one thing at a time, one stigma at a time, one problem at a time. And then you have to lean in. Lean in is where you really, really getting into the meat of that issue. And I use the priority and ease graph and created a matrix, and it's in the book. You actually put numbers on it. It's kind of like a risk mitigation factor.
Mm-hmm.
We actually do give it a specific ratio to, okay, if these are my steps to break my stigma, all of this, these are my solutions. So communicate the problem you have. Say, for example, okay, I'm going to give you an example, what actual real life example.
Yeah.
Addiction. So I had to be okay with, and then, Alcoholics Anonymous and everywhere you go, they talk about it. Like you have to first accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can communicate, you can call it acceptance, however that is, but first you have to tell yourself that and be honest with it. Okay, I have an addiction problem. And then analyze it. Why do I have this addiction problem? What started it? How did it all start? What started it? And why am doing it? And that's what, again, I wrote that in my book. Why, how, what. Once you found that, you also have to list what can stop me from overcoming this, and what are the steps that I can take to overcome this. You have to see both sides. It's a work, it's a process. And then lean in, which is the calm, CAL, where you really break it down on steps. Okay, so this is my first step. I need to be around community who are sober. I need to go to a meeting, a meeting. I need to journal steps. What can keep you? I need to go run. I need to go walk. I need to move. This is exactly when I get triggered to drink or do any other substance.
Mm-hmm.
This is the time of the day. Really figure it out around that problem. And then also figure out what can stop those small steps from happening. That's the lean in portion of it. And that's where the crux of the work is. You really have to be honest and lay it down. So now when you are seeing all this visually, it's much easier to find a way out than just keep everything in your head or visually or just talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
Talk therapy is good, psychotherapy is good, like all of that is good, therapist, counseling, but unless and until you are really, really accepting it inside of your own self, it's very difficult. And then lastly, M is mitigate, means now you write down what are of all these steps that are going to be a challenge, and then that are the solutions. How do you want to mitigate each of one of them? Write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, my biggest challenge is I go out with my friends and most of my friends drink. Okay, so how are you gonna handle that? How are you gonna mitigate that? So maybe don't go out for 6 months and be very open and honest about with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, listen, and that's again going back to another going. So it's constantly going, and you create a calm cycle in a cycle. So you can communicate that to your friends. Like, listen, I'm working on this, and I won't be able to meet you guys when you guys are drinking. I can only meet you guys maybe outside playing golf or something like that. That is not involved this. Are you guys in with me? If they don't, guess what? That becomes another cycle for you. Communicate to yourself like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is not the right group of friends right now I want to hang out with,
Oh, yeah.
respectfully. So communicate that. Maybe that will change their behavior too. So this is how the trickle effect should happen. And then also understand, okay, so now what? What do I do? What is other ways I can control it? Okay, at this point of time, when I feel triggered, uh, I need to set up something that can help me. And I'll give you my exact example. My trigger was every evening. Every evening, I would feel like drinking. I switched that with CrossFit, my workout. I will go to CrossFit gym every evening. And the thing is, the body is amazing. When you are sweating, your body doesn't want to feel anything else. And this is why movement is such a big part of my life right now. and I talk about it, that movement is your medicine. Go for a walk. Go for a walk in the nature. You don't even need to do heavy workouts. You feel bad, just go out, go for just a walk around the block, see other people.
Hmm.
So that's how I came up with this, and just kind of giving an overall very simplistic view. But as mentioned in the book, the way you're gonna walk through, if you really understand that, and you will see it, like it's very easily mentioned, and you just need to do the work. But it's a very much inner work. I mean, there's no shortcut to it. As I said, like I went back a few times, I failed, and you need to come back to it. That means however you communicated it, it didn't work. The steps that you written, it didn't work. So that means you again need to sit down and be like, okay, really, these steps are not the one. So maybe you can find more different steps than you actually thought it was. So then it becomes a very intrinsic work. But to be very honest, like it looks or it sounds very difficult, it's not. What it does for you also, it takes your mind off from the thing that is actually bothering you. Now you're kind of playing this game like, okay, how can I get better? How can I get better today? So then you start taking it as a one day at a time.
You know, something else that you mentioned in your book was meditation, I believe.
Hmm.
And have you used this to kind of help with help with some of the things that you've talked about in your book? And I guess like how do you have like a meditation routine, or like how often do you do it, and what exactly are you doing in your meditation sessions?
Yeah, so this is a very good question, because a lot of the time, and even me included, I used to think like when you meditate, you have to be at a position where like it's completely blank, but that's actually false notion of meditation. Meditate is actually nothing but to sit with yourself. That's all. Our minds, our thoughts are not supposed to be blank. So you will have a bunch of thoughts, as stupid as like, oh wow, I saw this car just now. What was that? Like 5 minutes ago. It's okay. The more you try to fight it, the more thoughts gonna come, and that's the power. That's the thing that people forget. That don't fight it. Sit with the thoughts. You'll be surprised the thoughts that actually come sometimes. And at one point, after sitting, these thoughts just gonna be there, but you won't be bothered. And that's exactly what meditation is. It's teaching you that no matter what thoughts are coming outside, your inside can be still, completely still. You do not need to get bothered, and you can tell your body to relax no matter what at the stress.
Hmm.
And the way I do meditation, I started meditation like in a very simple format, like just like anyone else. I would just sit, and I wrote that in my book also. There's that I would actually talk to my thoughts. I would actually talk to my bad habits that I wanted to break. I would talk to my pain that was happening,
Hmm.
and slowly it became a such a soothing experience. It was not like, oh, I want to sit today and like, oh my god, all these thoughts. It's not about fighting those thoughts anymore. Then it became like, I want to sit down and see what thoughts come and see how I feel today. And now I nowadays I do it in ice bath. So
Oh, wow.
I do ice plunge every day, and my first 2 minutes or 3 minutes is always meditation. I sit with the pain, and it never gets easy.
Hmm.
And that's the point. You're teaching your body to be calm again at a very stressful environment. Uh, and more you keep doing it, your body knows that, okay, no matter what outside stress, at any given point of time, I have the choice to stay calm. I have the choice to be still, to really understand the purpose behind this pain, a purpose behind this problem. Because, you know, hard times build characters. And We need to be grateful for, if we are grateful for good stuff, let's just all be grateful for even bad stuff. Because honestly, in my life, and I'm sure everyone will say the same, if you look back, your bad times actually did bring you good times. There's a reason for the bad times because you needed to learn.
Hmm.
So I think that's what meditation is, and that's exactly, it's very simple. It's not about fighting the thoughts. It's not about making your mind blank. It's not about that. It's really just sitting with your thoughts. That's all. That's all you're doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I have been trying to do more meditation lately. So that it helps a lot. The way that you described it, not fighting, but sitting with your
Hmm.
thoughts. Something that I got to do more of, definitely. Um, Rish, earlier you had mentioned a another book that you're writing.
Hmm.
Um, I was wondering if are you able to give like some details about what you're writing on?
Yes. So it's a much deeper. It's gonna be a much deeper thoughts. I mean, I've reached a point where I see life in a very, very deep, meaningful way. And now this book's the title of the book is Dead Man Walking,
Oh wow.
Curse of the Previous Generation and the Blessing It Brings. Maybe the subtitle will change a little bit here and there, but that's what it is. The idea behind it is that we all are dead men walking. We all are carrying our generational trauma from the society, trauma from the environment that we lived, that have passed beyond us, and we are not even doing anything about it. We are literally living beings, but literally we are dead men walking at this point. And I'm in that this book will be really, really long book. I'm breaking down each stigmas. I'm going deep into my childhood and small. I'm taking different scenarios of my childhood and I'm really breaking it down. I'm talking about education system now, how everything in the society, how education system now is flawed. That we still think that our old way of education is okay, which is not. Our life have changed. Our next generation is looking at things very differently. If anything, our next generation needs more outdoors, more understanding of soft skills, of gratitude, of mindfulness, of meditation, all that. When we're not teaching any of those, what happened, what worked for our previous generation when it was rightfully so after industrial revolution, we needed employees, so we created this school system, like churn out employees, like follow the rules, do what you're told, and then you will get the reward at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Nowadays, it's not the case anymore. Education is free. You open up YouTube, in 6 months, you can be a software developer. You don't need a degree. So the education needs to change. So everything around us, I'm taking each one of them and start really going deep into it. Like for example, I started talking about like how our own names, how our own ideologies are not ours anymore. Because again, we have been conditioned, but we are not worrying about that. We keep saying that we are free men, we are free, but we are not, unless and until you really sit down and ask yourself those questions, like why are things happening the way it is? So dead man walking. So this book would be a much deeper level, asking those questions and asking the really enticing the readers to ask those questions in a very simplistic way. Uh, that every chapter will go through in a very deeper meaning of life, and deriving from all the religious books that I believe in. A lot of these books have one thing in common, that everyone really wanted to show good and bad and the differences and the triumph of bad, um, and really hone in on that, and then openly at the end asking the readers a question in a very simplistic way, that where do you see yourself in this? Because that's where we need to start putting ourselves in each section. If we really want to change society, if we really want to talk about breaking stigmas, first we need to start putting ourselves in there, in those shoes. Otherwise it's very difficult from a third perspective.
Nice. Well, Rish, this has been a great conversation. I just want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day to do this. Um,
Absolutely. My pleasure.
yeah, and I thank you for the book. I enjoyed it, and I hope other people enjoy it as well and get value out of it, as I have. Really quick before we go, are there social media websites where you're on where people can connect with you?
Yeah. So on my Instagram, I have Dads and Deadlifts. That's where I post a lot of my uh, stuff. And then, of course, I have like Dads and Deadlifts Facebook and Dads and Deadlifts social Instagram. And yeah, those two are the main thing.
Awesome. And
And of course, my website, dadsanddeadliftsfoundation.org. So
cool. Okay.
yeah.
I'll include links to those sites that you mentioned in the description for people to check it out. I'll include a link to your book as well. Is Amazon the best place to purchase
Hmm.
it?
Yes. Yeah.
Also, yeah, I'll include the Amazon link as well in there. And yeah, no, thank you again, Rish. This was a lot of fun, great conversation. And I'd love to do it again when your new book comes out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure and really, really enjoy talking. And thanks for what you're doing because I feel like a lot of these things are needed in terms of breaking down the summary of the books. Because at the end of the day, as I said, like, books teaches us. It's one of the most oldest educational tools that I feel like a lot of people don't appreciate anymore. And the fact that you were doing it, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm gonna keep doing it till I don't know when. Just because I do I enjoy reading, so I want to kind of share the knowledge from some of the books I read with other people. So I yeah I'll keep doing it. Um, and yeah, thank you again, Rish.
Oh, absolutely.
And for everybody out there for listening, thank you again. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care, everybody.